Hi everyone, thank you for joining us today. We hope you're having a great re:Invent. So my name is Kevin Kennedy. I'm a Senior Marketplace Solutions Architect covering APJ. I'm joined by my colleague Doug.
Hi, I'm Doug Bayer. I'm a Senior Partner Solutions Architect at AWS. I support ISVs in integrating with AWS services.
Great, thanks Doug. So as I say, thanks everyone for joining us today. What we're going to talk about today, as the title suggests, is code to market. So we're going to demonstrate, and Doug's going to do some demonstration in the code of how to build and then launch an AI agent on AWS Marketplace. So we're going to start quite simply by building an agent locally, and then we're going to demonstrate how to first take that to agent core runtime, and then from there we're going to actually look at how you can take that to market, take that globally, take it to an audience by listing that on AWS Marketplace. And I'm going to come with different options for AWS Marketplace, and again show you some ways of integration. So, quick overview in terms of the agenda. First of all, we're going to talk about what is Bedrock Agent Core. So if you've not heard of Amazon Bedrock Agent Core, Doug's going to cover that quickly so everyone's level set. Then we're going to do a demo. We're going to, as I mentioned, we're going to demo an agent locally and then take that into Agent Core. Then I want to cover for you what is Marketplace. If anyone's not familiar with AWS Marketplace, we're going to cover what that is. Then I'm going to cover the delivery models that's available. And then we're going to jump into a demo as well. I'm going to deploy some listings on Marketplace and then deploy an integration into various different ways of metering and license manager. And finally, we'll just cover off the next step. So first thing I want to hand over to Doug. Doug's going to start off talking about Bedrock Agent Core.
Thank you. So let's talk about what is Agent Core. But before we do that, I just want to do a survey. How many of you have heard of Agent Core? Quite a lot of hands. How many of you have deployed it in production capability? A few hands, so good. So what is Agent Core? It's a set of services from AWS. It provides the infrastructure for you to deploy, run, and scale your agentic architecture. It was built to be modular, such that it's a bunch of services that we combine together to allow you to operate your agentic application following the best practice in terms of security, workload isolation, auto-scaling, etc. So today we are going to discuss, we're going to deploy an agent from our local computer to Agent Core runtime. So Agent Core runtime, see it as the compute portion of the infrastructure. That's where your agent runs, and it's operated in a way that the workloads are isolated with micro VMs. And so whenever a user starts a session with your Agent Core, it's isolated in a micro VM, so to provide that layer of security. But Agent Core, while the runtime itself is at the center of it, as I mentioned it before, it's modular, so that we have other services that we put together because we know that that's what you need to operate your agentic system at scale. So we have services such as Gateway. A gateway really is a way for you to extend your agentic system to other existing tools within your organization or outside of your organization. And so the gateway supports MCP, for example, which is a protocol to allow your agentic to gain more context by calling tools. But it also supports Lambdas. If you already have a Lambda function that you think would be better to integrate it with your agentic, then you use Agent Core. And we have other services like Agent Core Identity, and that's to provide a security level and authentication, authorization. We have memory to provide that consistent conversation level when your user interacts with your application. Okay, so this is the architecture. I just talked about Agent Core runtime. That's where your application runs. And then you have you have any multiple other tools around it to operate your agentic system. You have an agent called browser, for example. So if your agentic system needs to go to the web and acquire some data from a web page, you use that tool. And then you use the gateway for tooling, extending it. And you use memory to provide a consistent user experience. And then you connect it to model of your choice. So that's what the architecture looks like in general. And then the red part in the middle is what we are going to deploy. And we are going to do it live with a demo. So before we move forward, I wanted just to talk about the portfolio that AWS has in terms of agentic capabilities. So you can see the top of the stack is those applications that are ready to use, those agentic applications that are ready to use. You just come and plug in your data or just augment it with your context, and then you can use it right away. And then when you go one layer down, this is where Agent Core sits, you start getting some infrastructure and services capabilities that allows you to deploy, to build and deploy your own agentic system. Here, we assume that you know your business and you know your customers better than we do. So we provide you with the infrastructure, the services, to allow you to build your application and then make it available to the marketplace. And so you can see that there are two squares in red here. What we are going to show you today is how to deploy your agentic platform and then bring it up one stack layer in the marketplace so that your user can now go and then start using that application without having to code anything. And so further down the stack to the bottom of the stack, that's where you really need low-level access to build your own agentic system. Either you want to fine-tune, train, access GPUs and accelerations, that's when you go further down the stack. Perfect. So we talked about Agent Core. This is the core of our demo. This is what we're going to show you how to deploy an agent that's running on your local machine to the Agent Core runtime. And so what is Agent Core runtime, really? It's just a platform that allows you gives you the flexibility to deploy your own coding SDK. So you are not locked to any specific language or model. You can call any models via API. You can develop it using any framework, really. And it's just a runtime environment. It's provide isolation, session-level isolation using micro VMs. And it supports any model or any SDK. So this is what we are going to deploy today. And then you can see that we are packaging the application, converting it to a Docker, pushing it to a repository, in this case, Amazon ECR. And from there, the application, the container will really be deployed on Agent Core. Before we move forward, just briefly, let's talk about the value. The first value is really time to value, right? Because now you no longer have to worry about operating the infrastructure that powers your agentic system. You are laser focused on developing your agentic system, your code, and then the business logic solving your customer's problem or your organization problem. We remove that management operational layer for you. And so that's one of the values. So then because you're laser focused on developing your agentic application, you become more productive and you become also cost efficient in that. And the flexibility, as I mentioned earlier, you can use any model. You can also use any language framework to deploy your application. And trust, of course, we've baked in all the security best practices that we've learned over the year. We've baked into the modularity of the application, the platform in Agent Core. And therefore, when you start deploying your application, you have all those security toolings and services that allows you to just operate it faster at scale and at production level. And then briefly, for this demo, we'll be using Strands agents. Strengths Agent is just an open source SDK. I mean, it takes a model-driven approach in developing agents. And what it really does is it allows you to build an agent with just a few lines of code. Remember, when you're building an agent, especially if you are going to expose that agent to tooling, you need to build logic into it. If, then, do this, use this tool, etc. But when you're using a dedicated agent like with Strengths Agent, all that is done for you. So your agent is intelligent enough to know that this question requires me to access this particular tool, and then it's only going to call that tool without you telling the agent that I want you to use this tool. And so it's a very powerful library. You can use this, or you can use any other agentic library that you are familiar with. Perfect. I'll switch over to my laptop, and then we'll just start doing some demo. Right. Hopefully, this is not too small. So this is an agent that I have developed that runs on my local machine. So you can see that I'm importing this Strengths agent I just talked about to build my agentic application, and then also some tooling, because I'm going to have my agentic system access some tooling. And then you have to define your tools, right? Any other import is just really to help with the application, but really the most important are the agent that we're going to initialize and the tool. And then also we're importing some built-in tools. So Strengths Agent has some built-in tools. They are mostly just for reference. And then if you have your own tool, you can just bring it in. And then so, for example, here, we are taking what is a regular function with a dummy response. It just returns sunny. And what we're doing is we are decorating it with a tool from Strengths. And when you decorate it with a tool, it automatically converts your function, any Python function. Whenever you decorate it with a tool, it becomes a tool. And so we have a set of tools here. We have one tool that gives the weather, it's a dummy answer. Another tool that gives financial advice. Another one that gives you information about your AWS spending. And then in addition to those three, we also have two others, a calculator and a file reader. So what we're doing here is we are initializing our agent by passing a model to it. If you don't pass a model, it will just pick a model for you from Bedrock by default, because we're using the Bedrock initialization, right? From Strengths, that model, you import Bedrock. Let's say you wanted to, you use OpenAI. What you would do is you import OpenAI. So it's just to help and accelerate the development. And so because we are specifying a Bedrock model, if you don't specify the model that you want, it's going to use selected default for you. So in this case, we're specifying the Anthropic Claude 3.7 Sonnet. And then we are passing, we are now initializing our agents, passing it the model, and then the tools. So this is where we are passing multiple tools. Why are we passing multiple tools? Just to show you that your agent will be intelligent enough to select the right tool based on the user prompt, the user's question. And then this is the function that takes the user prompt and then pass it to the agent and then process the return. And then, yeah, that's it. If you want to run this application, you can run it. I have a Streamlit running here, so you can ask it a question. What is my AWS spending? Just a dummy question to see if it's going to recognize what tool to invoke, and then give us the answer.
So, Doug, quick question. So, you call this local agent. So this is running locally on your machine at the moment, is that right? So, but it's making a call to the model that's obviously elsewhere. Is that correct? So it's not all local, just the agent itself you're building is local, but it's making calls to a model externally.
Correct. So the agent is running on my local computer, and then it's calling Bedrock through the SDK, through the API. I could have done it with a local model as well. But because we're going to deploy it to AWS, it makes sense to have a model that's accessible over APIs. So yeah, it runs on my computer, and then it answers my question. I just ask it a question about billing. It selected the right tool, and I can ask it a question about give me some financial advice, and then it's going to detect the intention, and then it's going to look through the tools and see, oh, I have a tool that can provide financial advice. I'll use that tool, and then and it returns the financial advice, essentially. Yeah, so now we have an agent. It's running locally, but how do we convert that agent so that we can deploy it into Agent Core? So I'll come back to my application. So my application is called Local Agent. What I'll do is I'll just copy it and then call it hosted agent. Okay. Now I have an hosted agent application that I'm going to pull up. It's exactly the same application. We're just going to convert it to a Agent Core ready application. So the first thing that you do is you import the runtime. So I'll do from Bedrock Agent Core, that runtime, and then I'll import my Bedrock app. So this is a Bedrock application, right? So that's really the first thing that you do to convert a code that runs locally into an Agent Core capable. And the second thing that I would do is initialize my application. So I'll do app equal Bedrock. And so that's the second code that I'm adding to initialize the application. And so all my tools will remain the same, right, here. And then the only thing that I would change, remember, this is our entry point, right? This is the function now we're calling when we were using it on the Streamlits, right? It calls this function. So in order to operate it on Agent Core, you need to tell Agent Core what is your entry point. And by doing the way you do it is you, again, use a decorator, and then you call the app that we just initialized, and then you say entry point. By decorating my function, I'm telling Agent Core when it's deployed, I want you to use this function when I'm calling the endpoint with entry point. And so by default, entry point is your default API. By default, it's going to execute this function when it's running on Agent Core. So this is the third line that we've added. And then because it's going to become an API, Agent Core is going to just convert this application to an API. We no longer need all of this. All we need is to initialize our application. And then we say app.run. So here you can specify a port. By default, it's going to use 8080. But you don't need to know that port from the standpoint of a user trying to interact with it, because all you need is call the Agent Core endpoint. And so we no longer need all of this, because this is just for our local application. Yeah, so you can see that we've essentially 4 lines of codes converted what was a local agent into a Agent Core capable. And so before we move forward, let's review our requirement file. So we're importing Strands Agent, Bedrock Agent Core. Of course, we're using both of those to initialize the app. But then also, take a look at this Bedrock Agent Core Starter Toolkit. This is very important because what this does is it provides you either an API, a CLI, or an SDK for you to deploy your agentic system quickly. In this case, we're going to use it as part of a CLI, command line. But I strongly encourage you to use the starter kit because it speeds up your development and deployment and testing. And I'll show you what I mean in a moment. And then all the other are mostly just supporting tools here. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my hosted. So now that I have updated to be capable of running on Agent Core, it's still a local agent. I can still operate it locally. If I run it, it's just going to deploy a web API locally, and then I can just interact with that web API. But the goal here is really to push it to Agent Core. So the first thing that I'll do is I'll just say Agent Core. I need to be on the terminal. So it's Agent Core and then configure. And then E, and then I pass it to my application, the ones that I just prepared to deploy. In this case, we call the application hosted agent. And so that's the first thing for you to start preparing your application to deploy it on Agent Core. Remember that my CLI is configured with my AWS credentials. However you do it, temporary credential, permanent credential, we usually recommend using STS for this. And so what I'll do is I'll just going to start configuring my application. And then for the purpose of this demo, I'll just go with the default settings. So it's asking me to provide a role or create one by default. I'll go again and then just auto-create one. And then it's asking me to specify a repository where the Docker is going to be pushed to. And then I'm going to also ask it to auto-create for me. And then it has detected that I have a requirement file locally, which I just showed you, this requirement file. And then so it's asking me if this is going to be part of the deployment. And then I'll say yes, use that application. So I'll just enter. And then authorization configuration. So how do you want your user to access the application? Do you want them to use auth, or do you want them to use any other credentials? For this purpose, we'll just go with the default IAM. But in production, you want to, especially if multiple users will be using it, using an auth setup is a good way to do it, because then every user has different level of authorization, and that authorization will follow them as they execute your agentic system. And then I'm not going to add any or restrict any access to this for the purpose of this demo. But essentially, you will do that if you want to restrict access based on the network. All right? And then so it has configured my agents locally still. And then it's created a few files. It created a Docker file. This is the file that's going to execute to actually package my Docker. But also, it has created a Bedrock agent configuration. So this is the configuration. It's a snapshot of how my agent will be looking. And so you always refer to this one to see what are the configuration, and you can edit that configurations and push it. So briefly, so this is where we are, right? We are packaging it. We are going to push it to the repository on ECR and then deploy it on Agent Core. Perfect. So now that we have configured it, we now need to push it. And then all you need is type Agent Core launch. That's all you need. Enter. And what it's doing is it's converting this application into a Docker file, pushing it to a repository on ECR. And then once it's done, it's going to just pull that application into Agent Core. And that's it. It becomes available for you to operate and to start running inference on it.
So Doug, quick question. So while that's implementing there,
yep.
What we're showing here is Agent Core, and it looks pretty simple to take from local to migrate into Agent Core with a runtime. What's the alternative? So if someone wanted to take that agent they built locally and run that on AWS or run that anywhere, what do they need to do instead?
Yeah, so you have the option to use Agent Core. Of course, Agent Core has all the set of tools and services ready for you. So it's just helpful, and it's a managed service. But if you think that you have the expertise and then you want to deploy, self-manage it and deploy it, you could, first you can use the SDK. In addition to the CLI, you can use CloudFormation or Cloud Development Kit to push it to Agent Core. But then if you wanted to self-operate it, you can also run the same agent on an EC2 instance, or you can run it on a containerized environment such as EKS or ECS. So,
and Doug, Agent Core runtime, that's serverless, is that correct?
Yes, it is a serverless infrastructure. So it scales as you use it. Remember, I said that it's a micro VM session level isolation. So each user that starts interacting with the application has an isolated micro VM, and then that scales based on the number of users that you have. So it's auto scale up and down for you.
But to be clear, there's no infrastructure to manage for the customer? They're not managing virtual machines, are they?
No, you're not managing any infrastructure. You're given a monitoring platform that integrates with AWS services, and then that's what you do. You plug into your monitoring system, but essentially, this is operated for you. You only pay for what you use, etc.
Perfect.
Yeah. We can see that our application is deployed on Agent Core, and so now we may need to invoke it and test it. So let me try to test it. The same command, Agent Core, and then invoke, okay? And then you have to pass it a JSON. So what I'll do is, I'll pass it a prompt. Okay. And then that will be my question. So let me see. Can you give me some financial advice? Same question we ask it. And so now that the agent is deployed on Agent Core, we are invoking it directly from it, and then it becomes an API essentially. All right, just making that my prompt is correct, and then I'm gonna run it.
Doug, that's now calling the container that's hosted in Agent Core runtime.
Yes, so we are at that layer where now I'm the user, and then I have an application. Your user will not directly interact with the Agent Core API. You build an application on top of it, like my Streamlit application, for example, and then that's the API that will be called. And so you can see that the agent has replied with the financial advice that I have asked for, the same one I got when I ran it locally. And then I can even go to my my Agent Core. Actually have it here. And so you can see that I now have it running here. There's multiple agents, but remember we name it a hosted agent, and it's right there. And if you don't specify a name, it takes the name of the Python file, and then that's going to be the name of your agent. So we are in runtime, Bedrock runtime, and then you see all the hosted agent here. And so this is the agent. You can browse it, look at it. You can even interact with the agent from the terminal for the purpose of testing, etc. So just to recap, we package a local agent with a few lines of code, right? And then we convert it to Docker. Once it's on the ECR repository, it's there. It can be reused. It can be redeployed multiple times, right? So if you are an ISV, you want to sell a product, you can either offer it, and Kevin is going to talk about it, you can offer it as a SaaS, means it's hosted on your account, and then they can access it via API, or you can also just have them deployed in their own accounts. And Kevin is going to go over those options with you. But yeah, just in general, we took what was a locally running agent, we converted to an hosted agent with essentially 4 lines of codes, and then we were able to execute it from Agent Core. And that's it. And so if I want to finish my testing, I'll just do Agent Core, destroy. And then if I enter, it's going to clean up everything from my local machine, but also it's going to remove everything from Agent Core runtime on AWS. And I'm not going to destroy it because Kevin may want to reuse it. So yeah, thank you very much. This was just how to push it to Agent Core runtime. Now I'll pass it to Kevin. He's going to talk about the marketplace aspect of it.
Great, thanks, Doug. That's really good. So just to recap, Doug's built an agent locally. Then he's migrated to Agent Core with just a few commands. So that's great, but it's running your environment. So if you want to take that to market, you want to productize that, you need to think about how you can either deploy that into a customer environment, or as Doug mentioned, you may have a SaaS component where you charge the customer there. So we're going to cover a bit of that in a moment. So we're going to take it a step further. We're going to look how you can productize it, how you can firstly list the product on Marketplace, and this would enable you to take that product globally. But before I go into that, I just want to level set. So you can just get a show of hands. Who here is aware of AWS Marketplace? Yeah, quite a few of you. So just as well, who has either listed a product on Marketplace or purchased a product via Marketplace? Okay, less of you. Okay, that's great. So we're going to cover that today. And if there's any questions, I can cover those off at the end as well. So let's see, AWS Marketplace. So for anyone who's not too familiar, our vision for Marketplace is to be the best place for customers to find, buy, and deploy third-party software, professional services, and data. So we look at here as the everything store for software. Here's some stats we've got available. It gives you a bit of an idea. We've got over 30,000 transactable listings on Marketplace today. We've got over 70 categories. And recently, I believe July of this year, we introduced categories for AI agents and tools. We have over 3 million subscriptions. And a really important one as well is millions of visitors per year to AWS Marketplace. So if you're an AI agent today and you're looking to take it to market, it's a really good place to take your product, and it reaches a global audience. So what I'm going to talk about today, we're going to focus on, is the AI agent delivery models. So let's discuss a few of those now. All right, so in AWS Marketplace, each product has a different product type. So I think as Doug alluded to, you can categorize those based on whether you would like that product to be deployed into the buyer's account. So we see a few here. We've got an AMI, containers, machine learning images. They will be purchased by a buyer and then get deployed into that buyer's account. So they would then look to manage the resources for that product in their account, but you can charge them, for example, a licensing. On the other hand, you've got the seller account, or a SaaS product. So if you've got a product that runs in your account and you want to provide access to that product, say via a license, and they can sign up to your product, have certain entitlements to that, that can typically be a SaaS product. But the definition would be, is it going to run in your account as a seller versus is it going to run in the buyer's account? And the thing we're going to focus on here is, if you see down the bottom, we've got compatible containers can deploy now in Agent Core runtime. And we also have API-based SaaS AI agent and tools. So one, as I say, would be Agent Core runtime deploys as a container in the buyer environment. An API-based SaaS AI agent and tools would be a SaaS product that deploys in your account, and you provide access to the buyer as an API endpoint. Both of those, and we're going to go into those in a minute, goes through upfront contracts and also pay-as-you-go pricing. So that applies to both. And really, the decision you need to make, really, which one you choose, is really the understanding what your buyers are looking to purchase and understand how you like to take your product to market. So that's really a business decision on which one you prefer to do. So let's have a little bit more look into this one here, the two options. We see
Kevin,
container-based agent and tools on that left there.
Kevin, a quick question. What are some of the factors that customers need to take into account when deciding the listing model or the pricing model?
Yeah, sure. So the pricing model, if you're deciding that, we're going to cover that in a moment about the difference between contracts and pay-as-you-go. But ultimately, the first decision you need to make is how you wish to deploy that product, and that make a decision first. So is that infrastructure going to run in your environment and you give entitlements to a buyer versus are you happy to if you go back to what Doug was creating there, there's a container to package that up, then the buyer will go and access that. So that's the two different models. But we're going to cover off a couple more in a moment, which would be a contracts versus pay-as-you-go. And again, that would just come down to really the buyer preference and whether they're comfortable purchasing it as a pay-as-you-go product versus purchasing it with a contract where they purchase in entitlement in advance. So we're just going to move on and look at how it gets deployed, and I'm going to do a bit of a demo into the code as well. So what Doug has showed you earlier is how to deploy the agent. We've got there's a Docker file. It's gone onto the ECR repository. And that's all in your environment today. So if we bring it into Marketplace, what we're going to then do is create a Marketplace listing. And then if it's a container, we create a container listing, and then we take that container which is in your private ECR repository and bring that across into a Marketplace ECR repository that applies to your listing, and then you publish that. So it's very simple. So let's go and have a look at that now, and I'm just going to do a deployment. So I'm going to show you how that's going to look. All right, so first of all, if we're looking to do a deployment, you can either deploy it via the Marketplace portal. So it's kind of a click next, you can do it to deploy it, or you can templatize it. So you can create a JSON file with the parameters you want, with the content that's required. And then what you do is you call the Marketplace Catalog API. So I've created some of these here in advance, and you can look, we've got some examples that you can do yourself. So if you're looking to deploy multiple products, I'd recommend doing this as a JSON file, and then just deploying it that way, called in the Marketplace API. So let's look through what we've got here. So we've got a logo that's required for your product, and we've added a few categories, and then we've just given the product a title. So you just give it a title that's appropriate for your product. There's other things you'll need to include in it, such as a long description, and that really helps with the search engine optimization and really helps with the buyer experience to understand your product. And a few of those here, such as highlights. But the things I want to highlight to you here is the dimensions. So when you publish a product or a list of products on Marketplace, you create what's called dimensions. That's really the pricing for your product. So in this case, we've got a standard and a premium product. So this one here is a pay-as-you-go subscription product. So it's going to be externally metered. And what we're going to do, when a user signs up to use that product, they can be either charge a standard price for a standard query or a premium price. And what you set here for the dimensions is entirely up to you, and it really depends on your products. It's very product dependent, but you'd usually align this to how you would charge for your product today. So if it's an AI agent and you're looking to charge customers, what I've done here is a standard and premium depending on the query they send in. And then once you're happy with that, you would create the repository that would go into Marketplace. You give it a repository name, and that's give it a unique name. And then once we're happy with that, and we set that price in, so we put a price for standard, and then you can set a price for premium, and then you're ready to go. So what we're going to just do here, I'm going to generate a listing here, and that's just giving me the command I need to run. And I'll run that. And that's going to call over to AWS Marketplace. So if the syntax is correct, we get back what we've got here, which is a change set ID and a change set ARN. That shows me the syntax for what I put for my JSON file is correct. It's got the content required. So the next step for that, if we move across, you can now see here, all being well, we should see two or three requests that come through to create new listings. And as we can see it here, we've got 3 new listings that's been created. They're under review at the moment. That takes about 10 to 15 minutes, so it gives you an idea that it takes a little while. Once they get approved, then they get published onto AWS Marketplace, and that'll be your listing ready to go. But let me just show you one I created earlier in the interest of time, rather than waiting 10 to 15 minutes. So let's have a quick look here. I created a container contract product earlier. And what I've done, provided the details we saw in that JSON file, and pricing information. So this is a contract-based one. And we've got simple and advanced. And I also created one for pay-as-you-go as well. So, and then we would create the repository. So pretty straightforward there. So let me just move back. All right, so now we've got the listings in Marketplace. The next step is deciding the pricing model, as Doug mentioned earlier. So we're focusing today on the container products. And as I say, SaaS would be a separate one, but we're going to focus on the container products. So there's going to be two we're going to look into today. One is with License Manager. So essentially, every request will trigger a license checkout. We call him License Manager. So what's going to happen is someone will go and purchase a product, to purchase those dimensions, and then once they've run a query, it'll check out a license against that. We'll show you that. And if there's no license available, then they'll get an invalid license error. So this model, they essentially pre-purchase licenses, and then it'll draw down against that with License Manager. So think of it as an analogy. If you was going to buy coffee and you purchased 10 of those in advance, and you can use that to purchase those. All right, so, and the other one we're going to, and we'll show you here, here's some of the code that you'll see in terms of the parameters that get called. So the example of the syntax that needs to be provided to check out a license. And the other one would be contract pricing. So we're going to go through and demo that afterwards. So let me firstly go back. I'm going to show you how it looks for contract price first. So we've got a contract price here. So we just go across that one. Okay, so we've got a contract for agent here. So the main things, what we've taken across, we've advanced what Doug's put in his code. Doug has got, is added the Bedrock agent. Now we've added in License Manager. So we've added in, quite simply, it's going to use the client for License Manager. So we need to call upon that. I've added in the product ID. And that product ID relates to the listing you create. And then quite simply, I've added in some stuff here for licensing and checkout. So what I've specified here is for each time a query is run, to check out one license. And that's based on the dimensions that you've set. So we've got some of the components here. And if it's successful, take out one license. So how we've done that, determined it, we've determined a simple is going to be based on a simple query, and then advanced, if it meets any of these keywords such as deep analysis or detailed analysis, any of the ones I've specified here, it'll be advanced. It's quite simple, but you can put the logic into your application for that. And then the agent endpoints Doug explained earlier. So the main difference we've added here is the ability to call License Manager. So I'm going to show you this one here. So in this one, I've deployed this into Agent Core much the same way that Doug has created, but it's running locally in my account at the moment as a test. So I'm just going to do a quick test of this one. So Agent Core invoke simple finance advice. And this will come back. And then if everything's all okay, it'll come back. And you see here, dimensions simple, and it's consumed one license. And then you get a unique ID. So each time you run that, it'll draw down a license from License Manager. So the alternative would be, as I mentioned before, is the alternative would be metering. So if we went down the path of pay-as-you-go, the main difference we'll see here is it would actually use the Marketplace metering service. So if you think of it as pay-as-you-go, you're going to buy a coffee, you're paying for that coffee each time. That's exactly what you're doing here. And each time a query is run, it will meter that. And based on your dimensions and your charge type, then there'll be a charge to the user. So that's essentially how that works. It will record the actual consumption in real time, and the customers only pay for what they're using per their bidding request. And similarly, I'm going to show you, it will detect if it's a simple or advanced query. So much the same way, but except using License Manager, what we're going to use here is the metering API. So if we flick down to here, I've set this one up earlier as well. So if we go through the code on this one, very similar. We've difference here, the client, rather than being License Manager, we've called them the metering Marketplace. So we've called that one here. We've set in here the product code. So that's unique to your product listing as well. We set those dimensions as standard and premium. And same logic as we had before. We've put in place that if it meets any of the keywords, and it would be premium, otherwise it would be standard. So for each of those keywords, if it comes over, they'd be premium, otherwise it would be standard. And then we get the output. So very simple and straightforward. And then we run this here. I do a prompt. I'm going to ask it for simple finance advice. Same query as before, but except for drawing down from the licensing, from the License Manager, what we're going to do here is it's recorded a query, and it's given it, say, we've used a unit of standard, and here's the metering record. And each time you run that, it's going to be a unique metering record. The main difference is you're not drawing down against licenses, and every time you run this, you can continuously run this, and you just pay as you go, depending on the price per the unit. So that's pretty straightforward there. So the next bit I'm just going to show you afterwards would be the customer experience. So let's have a quick look here from the customer view. So once we go over to here, we can see I've gone into a different account now. So I've gone into a customer account. So this is what a customer would see. So they've seen a product I've created earlier, and they could have got the option to purchase that. So in the interest of time, I've already done some things in terms of purchasing earlier, but let's go through the process. So you can subscribe to that product, and this would be a public offer. And what we've got here, we've signed up here for 1 month, and you've got advanced and simple dimensions. What I've done here is I've purchased 40 of advanced and 40 of simple, and there's a price against each of those. And we've done that earlier, it's been subscribed to, and now I can just launch the software. And because this is Bedrock Agent Core, and it quite simply deploy that into my environment, so I can now set up hosting on Agent Core. So if I click on that, it's going to take me through to Agent Core runtime. And this would be the buyer experience. So we've got buyer, agent. And as we go down here, we just decide we're going to host this agent. And this one I'm showing you an example of is a contract pricing. And what we're going to need to do, once it gets deployed, is give it permission to call the license manager. This will start deploying here. I'll just go through here to the version it's created. And as Doug showed you earlier, there's a service role. So if I click on that role, I can see it's got the ability to execute Agent Core runtime. It hasn't got anything at the moment for License Manager. So let me add that one in here. So we've got License Manager consumption policy. We'll add that in. And that's going to allow us each time it runs to connect to License Manager. So what I'm going to do, as you see, this is a new one that we deployed. So if I go back to this particular one here, this creates a unique runtime ARN. So I'm going to copy that. And then what I've done, I've just created some Python code here. And this is from a buyer experience. But I think as Doug mentioned earlier, most likely you create this as a web application, but the buyer can call this agent from Agent Core directly from the console, directly from the command line here. So what we're going to do, I'm just going to update this. I'm going to provide in here the ID of the agent that's been subscribed. And what it's going to do, we're going to run a command against that. It's going to invoke the agent that's just been purchased. So this is in the buyer account. And that's invoked that successfully. And we can see here, the dimension here is used as a simple license. It's consumed 1 license here, and that's the token. What we can also check is actually, this is from the buyer perspective, how many licenses they've got available still. So we can do it in a couple of ways. We can just run that via the command line. And we can see here what I've got in terms of usage. I've got simple, I've got 39 that's been consumed out of 40 because I've been testing it earlier. So if I was to run another command there, that would hit the 40 mark. And then what we see is if it goes to above 40, you won't be able to run any more commands. So we run that one here. So we should now have hit 40. So now we've got an error that's come back, and it's checkout failed. An error has occurred. There's no entitlements available. So, and then if you're going back and check, all 40 have been consumed. So what that means is, as a buyer, they can then decide to go and purchase more licenses. So it's a great way to take your product to market and let buyers consume a certain amount of licenses as a contract pricing. And if they consume all of those, they can come back and purchase more. And the alternative, which we showed before, is that pay-as-you-go model. And really the difference is that pay-as-you-go, if they're comfortable with that, they just pay-as-you-go on those continuously. So really what you can do, if you're looking to take a product to market, you can actually list that in 2 ways. You can have one as a contract and one as pay-as-you-go. and give those users the option there. So just going back. Okay, so we've showed you how it looks like here. And this was how it looked when it integrated. So we just did the demo as pay-as-you-go. So that's pretty much how it gets deployed, and that's from the buyer experience. You can see how simple it is to take that as a container product. The alternative would be if you was looking to provide that as software as a service. And really what you'll just look to do there is you'll take the agent that Doug created earlier, and rather than taking that as an agent, you deploy it into the customer environment. You would have that run in your own environment, and then you would sell that as a software as a service, provide access as an API endpoint. And then the users will be able to access those APIs, and then you'll be able to charge them based on the usage of the product. So again, you can go down the contract model, or you can use pay-as-you-go. The difference is there, the metering records, you would be in charge of understanding what metering the customer is using, and you would send those to AWS once per hour, and we'd have those metering records and send that back and charge the customer. So that's really the two differences. So that's pretty much towards the end of the talk there. What we've got in terms of next steps, so is a couple of workshops if you'd like to get involved and then to build an agent yourself and then sell it on AWS Marketplace. We've got a session tomorrow that starts at 1 p.m. till 2 p.m. in Caesars Forum. And there's also some published labs as well. So we've got Agent Core based on AI agent and tools. And we've also got a lab if you wanted to do a SaaS model as well. So SaaS with API-based AI agent and tools. So but if you're looking to get involved in these and you've got something you want to take to market, I encourage you to look at the labs and you can follow through and publish those. Yeah, I think that's about it in terms of what we've got. So thank you for your time. Happy to answer any questions anyone's got.